Hey everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I like to post about books and music, mostly Taylor Swift. Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, how y'all doing?
I think this is the longest break I have taken off of YouTube literally ever, and that's not without reason. Last I really talked to you, well, I last posted in December, but that was old footage that I finally found the energy to edit. But I last filmed, oh god, I feel like it was like the week or the week after I moved here to Washington State. That's a really long time. I'm loving it here. That's not the problem. There have been issues going on in my personal life that I'd rather not get into. It's just been like one trauma after the other. I have filmed a few like reading vlogs. I have an old Lana Del Rey video I filmed while I was still living in Oklahoma that I still need to edit, but mainly why I haven't been posting is because I'm so freaking exhausted. Well, now I kind of have an idea of what's going on. I'll be going back to the doctor later this week. Got blood work done. My TSH has been kind of high for like years. I got gaslit by a doctor in Oklahoma. Now I'm here. I seem to be having a better experience so far, but we'll see. My prolactin is really too high, so that's cute. I've been dealing with extreme fatigue and like kind of depression since 2022, and like I chalked it up to other things, but like things really took a turn like around when I moved, because I think I got stressed out. Everything just like hit the fan. Been too exhausted to edit, too exhausted to really like get ready to film, because by the time I get ready I'm like too exhausted to actually do the filming. And sometimes I'm filming for like 3-4 hours depending on how long like an album is. So all of that, I have not felt good about how I look. Like my skin has been so dry for the last couple years. I feel kind of like in Jennifer's Body when she gets all gross looking because she hasn't been eating boys. That's how I feel right now. I need to do like a face mask or something. Things are just not going great. But happy 2025, happy first video of the year in April. I wanted to just come back with something short and easy. I'm getting like exhausted and fatigued just like sitting here talking. This is not good. So we're going to talk through my favorite books of 2024. I only read 50 books this year, which is like one of the lowest numbers I've read in years. And I was working the least last year. So that's interesting. It really isn't about how much time you have. It's like your mental state, your health. It's so much. There were other years when I was feeling better and things weren't going wrong at every turn, and I was able to read a lot more even though I was very busy. I ended up having only 3 5 stars out of 50. However, I did have 2 4.5, and I had something like 25 4 stars. So over half of all of the books I read last year were 4 stars or above, which is really good in my opinion. Quality over quantity, I guess. So I'm just going to talk about the 3 5 stars and the 2 4.5 stars. I have very limited notes, extreme brain fog, and I forgot what the third one was. Oh, memory problems. Okay, we're starting off with the first 5 star I had in the year, which was The House Across the Lake. So this is a thriller. I don't know if I've had a thriller in my 5-star lineup in the last few years, honestly. Okay, so this book takes place in Vermont. It's very atmospheric. There's a fancy cabin on a lake where this actress, Casey Fletcher, has retreated to her family's cabin. She is struggling with addiction, I believe, because her husband had just passed away by drowning in that lake the previous year. And while she is kind of coping at her family's cabin, she ends up seeing her neighbor, a former runway model, Catherine Royce, swimming in the lake one afternoon, and she starts drowning. Casey feels like she needs to save her, well, as any normal person would who has that ability, I guess, but like, especially after the trauma of the last year, this is a lot to go through in just a year. Anyway, after Casey rescues Catherine, she ends up befriending her and becoming friends with Catherine's husband as well. Then suddenly Catherine disappears. Sketchy things unfold. The twists and turns that this takes you on, I'm looking over my notes right now to jog my memory. It does get a little bit paranormal. I'm not going to spoil anything, obviously. And usually I don't like that in thrillers because it makes it feel less realistic and therefore less scary sometimes, because it's like, oh, this doesn't feel like it could be possible or like happen to me. I'm a realist. But I don't know, something about it made it feel realistic. It was just so creepy, really coupled with that Vermont atmosphere. I really liked how this author wrote guilt and how each character kind of felt responsible for certain things, and I think she just described that human emotion really well. And they're kind of supporting each other through these different circumstances as they're trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. And yeah, Casey has a lot of character development. By the end of it, it feels very Sidney Prescott. This book was kind of The Woman in the Window meets, like, I don't know, just any remote cabin on the lake type thriller. And then The second 5-star book I had in 2024, we are veering in a very opposite direction in terms of genre. So this was actually a children's picture book. It's called Threads. This is a book about Ukrainian history told through the perspective of a little girl and explains the history of Russian occupation on the country. I thought this was so beautiful. I cried reading this. It's a children's picture book, but it was very emotional and beautiful. I love the title and how it plays into the traditional Ukrainian shirt, the vyshyvanka. And yeah, I would highly recommend this to anyone who wants to know a little bit more about Ukraine, who enjoys these kinds of artistic books, or if you have a kid and this seems like something they might enjoy. That was quick and easy. Okay, and the third 5-star book and final 5-star book of 2024 was The Traveling Cat Chronicles. Oh my god. Looking back, I think this might have been my favorite book of the year just because of the feeling that I get just reading the title out loud. So I initially found this book shortly after I moved to Washington. I very quickly was scoping out the Barnes & Noble in the area, and I saw this book that was a new release called The Goodbye Cat. It sounded absolutely devastating. I have a cat who is 17 years old. She's drinking behind the camera right now. She's a hydrated queen. But I saw the title of that book. I was immediately interested and found out that there's actually a prequel, or The Goodbye Cat is kind of a part 2 to another book called The Traveling Cat Chronicles. Despite its cute little name, this was way more heartbreaking than The Goodbye Cat, which I read immediately after. We follow our main character, Satoru, as he takes a road trip with his cat, Nana. They're traveling around Japan in a silver van to visit Satoru's old friends. There's a lot of descriptions of the changing scenery and seasons as they're spending all this time traveling. I feel like I'm not describing it well because I don't want to spoil it. There is more of a reason for why they are doing this traveling, and the whole thing is fucking devastating. It's so beautiful. I believe there's also a movie. It's Japanese, so I think there are English subtitles. This is a very short book. I find it amazing that this author is able to teach us so much about Satoru in so few pages. He felt more real than some characters do in books where they take hundreds and hundreds of pages to introduce you to the character. I also jotted down that it wrote so simply about grief, but so effectively, and the bond between human and animal. I'm not okay. I only recommend this if you want to cry. Devastating, beautiful, emotional. That's usually what my favorites tend to be. Okay, next we have my first 4.5 stars of the year. The Last Letter. I found this on Book Talk. So to read you a description of this one. Ella, a single mother to twins, begins writing correspondence with her brother Ryan's friend and a member of the same special operations unit. This is a military romance. I am genre jumping like never before. This friend's name is Beckett, but Ella doesn't get to learn his real name. She only knows his call sign, which is called Chaos. So they're writing back and forth for months and kind of falling in love with each other's personalities. I think Chaos, or Beckett, actually is able to get pictures of Ella, so he knows what she looks like, but I don't think she ends up learning what he looks like. She ends up leaning on his letters for emotional support because her daughter ends up diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. So when Ryan and Beckett are getting on leave in January, they decide to go visit Ella. That's how they end up meeting. I want to make sure I'm not spoiling anything with my summary. I don't think I am. This was really atmospheric too because it takes place in Telluride. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Colorado. So it's I think it's a ski resort town, and Ella owns some kind of collection of cabins, I think it was, that she's renting out to people, and that's her business. As far as my thoughts on this book, I wrote My Sister's Keeper meets Purple Hearts. I actually did not like Purple Hearts. The book was better than the movie, but it was a little bit weird. This would have been a 5 out of 5. I loved how engaging it was. I loved the pacing. It was just a very enjoyable read. It's just the ending, it got a little bit too trauma corn for me. The whole thing is so emotional and beautiful from start to finish, even without that last bit of let's drive the trauma home disaster that happens at the end. I hate a book that's way too much of a happy ending. I love, my 5 stars make me cry, but this was just a little bit overboard. I literally wrote down, I loved learning about characters who are so different from me with such different goals in life, even if I thought one of them was low-key a dumbass. Different priorities, I guess. And then I wrote an example that's kind of a spoiler, but it also wasn't completely a 5-star because I got a little bit of a weird pro-lifey vibe from one of the characters, but I mean, that's how people are. It doesn't necessarily mean this author is pushing that. It's just one of the characters, reading about people who are different from me. And Beckett's interest in Ella, a huge part of it being because she's a mother, which I guess some people are into. There's an abbreviation for that for a reason. But yeah, he ends up really liking how selfless she is for her kids, and she's a single mom. She works very hard to support them. He finds that very admirable. To sum it up, I wrote a great story, but what the hell happened with the last 3 chapters? And my last 4.5 stars of the year. I liked this one more than The Last Letter. This one is Second Glance by Jodi Picoult. This one was almost there. I think I had like one critique of the entire book. I'm still thinking about this book to this day. To be fair, I read it towards the end of the year, so it's more fresh in my mind. Jodi Picoult radicalized me. Jodi Picoult is the greatest of all time. I actually first read one of her books in high school. It was about a school pew-pewing. Incredible. The amount of empathy she injects into her books. I think one of the switching POVs in that one was like the perpetrator's mother and her thoughts on everything and what she was going through. But anyway, we're talking about Second Glance. Jodi Picoult also wrote My Sister's Keeper. That's probably her most popular one. Oh, this book is also set in Vermont. What is it with me and my Vermont reads last year? So to summarize, first of all, you need to go to Jodi Picoult's TikTok page. She's an icon, she is a legend, and she is the moment. All her books are so like marketed to women and kind of marketed as like a chick lit type thing, but like these are controversial topics that she's tackling, and she writes about them in such lyrical ways, so much empathy, so many characters from different backgrounds. So there are a lot of switching POVs in this one, and I think I had a little bit of an issue at the beginning because, my god, the amount of characters, I think that was my one critique. It is hard in the beginning to keep track. I did read a lot of reviews before reading this book that said there's like 15 different characters, so the bar was on the floor. I was bracing myself for like so much confusion. I think there were only like 5 characters that it was switching between in the beginning, but of course each character has their own like family and friends that you also have to keep track of. It gets a little bit confusing, but then there's a part where it flashbacks to the past, and that's when the story really picked up for me. So the story starts in current day Vermont, where an old man puts a piece of land up for sale and unintentionally raises protest from the local Abenaki Indian tribe, who insists that it was a burial ground. So odd supernatural events start plaguing the entire town of Comtasuk, and a ghost hunter is hired by the developer to help ensure the residents of the town that there is actually nothing supernatural going on. So then we are introduced to Ross Wakeman. He's had a million near-death experiences. He lost the love of his life to a car crash, so he is intentionally putting himself in harm's way. He lives only for the moment he might once again encounter the woman he loves. He ends up coming to Comtasuk and meeting a mysterious woman named Leah Beaumont. Basically, the controversial thread that is weaving this entire story together through kind of this ghost story, past and present, combining, is a very unknown chapter of American history, which is the Vermont eugenics project of the 20s and 30s. So we see that happening in the 20s and 30s, and we also see like a present day story being told. There's a woman, I forgot her name already, one of the other main characters who I really enjoyed reading from the perspective of, because she is a doctor who works in IVF. There ends up being such an interesting debate between Ross and this doctor in a coffee shop. There's like chemistry between them, but kind of like where you draw the line with, I don't want to say designer babies, but like picking genes, IVF in general. Of course, as a doctor who works in IVF, that woman is very, I don't want to say she's defensive of her line of work. I mean, it's obviously like her passion. It's her, my god, my brain fog is so bad. What is the word? Passion, I guess, works. I can't think of the word I'm looking for. She's defensive of it, but of course she's not a eugenicist like of the 20s and 30s in the same town. But Ross is challenging her ideas, genetic disorders, whether it's worth having a child who has something like that, the ethics of it all, because Ross has a nephew named Ethan who has a rare skin disorder called XP, where he has extreme sensitivity to the sunlight, which can be very painful. It puts him at a way more increased risk of skin cancer, and his life expectancy is a lot lower because there is no cure yet. So he feels very passionately about this in a different way from, her name is Meredith, the doctor's name is Meredith. He feels very passionately about it in a different way from Meredith. But then we also see Ethan's point of view, and like, yeah, Ross talks so much about how Ethan is like an amazing kid and has had such a great effect on everyone around him's lives, but like Ethan is in a lot of pain, and like I don't think he voices that much to the people around him. He doesn't want to make them pity him. Even at 12 years old, he like has this much of an awareness. So Ross isn't really considering what Ethan thinks or wants. He just knows he loves his nephew and is so glad to have him in his life. And as this whole debate in the coffee shop is going on between these two characters, Meredith and Ross, you can't figure out where the author is even standing. I was like, what does Jodi Picoult actually think of all this? Like the way she's writing from both perspectives and with so much nuance, I think that takes a lot of talent and integrity to be able to like flesh out these arguments on both sides, the ethics of IVF, all of that. It's just an incredible, interesting book. It is quite heavy. As I said, it deals with the history of the eugenics project in Vermont in the 20s. It gives that context for, you know, the arguments that are potentially against some forms of IVF. Ultimately, I feel like the conclusion I drew from that book is like the government probably shouldn't be regulating people's reproduction. That's where it gets really hairy. I don't know. I feel like it's okay for parents to find out this kind of information before conception, like what that couple individually may or may not be able to handle. Like, what's the harm in knowledge, you know? Maybe. I could be completely wrong. But yeah, it will teach you a lot about real history. It is such an emotional, lyrical story of fiction, and it will get you really thinking where you stand on these kinds of topics. So that was the last almost 5-star of the year. I also feel like I should put up all of my 4 out of 5 books on the screen right now just to show you what else I ended up loving a lot this year. And I loved some of these, like, a lot. They were like almost 4.5. They just weren't like the absolute cream of the crop. Even though I only read 50 books last year, as I said, most of them being 4 stars or above is really good if I do say so myself. I would love to hear down below in the comments what your favorite book you read last year was. And if you've had any good 5 stars this year so far, I already have. I didn't have a 5-star last year until, I feel like it was July or August, like halfway through the year. I finally figured out what I was doing and what books I needed to be reading. But yeah, we're off to a better start this year. I am kind of slow because I'm exhausted and I can't wake up. But hopefully that's going to be solved soon. I hope to see you again very soon. If you want to follow me on my Instagram, it is right here. And if you want to follow me on my TikTok, that is right here. I will see you all as soon as I possibly can for another video, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye, guys.